up, guys? How's everyone doing? Welcome to another episode of Fight Briefing. I hope everyone's doing well. And we're covering UFC Moscow this weekend, guys. This is going to be an interesting card. The UFC returns to Russia this weekend for their second show in the city of Moscow as hot prospects Zabit, Magomedsharipov, and Kattar are going to clash in what should be a hell of a fight, or a main event, to say the least, for UFC Fight Night 163. So we'll get right into it. We're going to go over the entire main card. It's actually an interesting card this weekend. It's going to have a very heavy Russian feel to it, as expected, and it's not really surprising given that, you know, a large Russian contingent of fighters currently signed to the UFC. But nonetheless, it should be some pretty good fights. Even if they're not high on name value, I think you guys are still going to enjoy the fights this weekend. But before I get into the fights this weekend, I just want to give a shout out to Drunk Savage. We haven't heard from him since 2 nights ago. The last time was during a gaming stream. And we do notice when our OGs go missing for a little while and something seems a little odd. So if any of you guys have heard from Drunk Savage, or if you have any contact with him, if you could please just check in and make sure everything's okay, and then let us know that everything's okay. But hopefully we see him around soon. And welcome back to Michael Anzalone. It's good to see you in the chat again. I hope everything's going well. I hope your health is well. And yeah, it's good to see you back. All right, guys. Let's get right into it. First, I'm going to show you guys all the fights on the main card. What's up, Steelers Respect? Steelers Respect 90? All right. So, to kick off the main card, we've got Shamil Gamzatov versus Klidson Abreu. Gamzatov. Shamil Gamzatov versus Klidson Abreu. Then we have Ramazan Emeev versus Anthony Rocco Martin. Khadis, Ibragimov versus Ed Herman. And then not our co-main event. The one right before the co-main event, we have Zelim, Imadaev versus Danny Roberts. Alexander Volkov versus Greg Hardy is the co-main event for the evening. And then Zabit Magomedsharipov versus Kattar ends the main card for the night. How's everyone doing? Spell much? I know. Well, here's the thing. With Russian names and stuff like that, I'm not the most proficient in sounding out their names, I guess you could say. Who gives a fuck? This is Fight Briefing. All right. Starting off with the first fight on the main card, Drunk Savage is the number 1 guy in MMA-Hole land. That's right, 2 joints. That is right. A bunch of Madoffs and Greg Hardy, who's Drunk Savage. Drunk Savage is swole OG, my friend. How could you ask such a question? All right, guys, let's get to the first fight of the main card. Shamil Gamzatov versus Klidson Abreu. I'm going to call him Shamil, right? Now, Shamil's currently on a 13-fight winning streak, and he's undefeated. So, of course, his record is 13-0-0. And his last fight was in August of last year, and he fought for the PFL then. He fought Rex Harris. I'm not sure how many of you guys saw that. He did win by unanimous decision. Now, Shamil looks like an incredibly fascinating prospect for the UFC at 13-0. And I know I've been guilty of jumping on hype trains in the past, but Shamil's highlight reel does appear to show, you know, a super aggressive striker who throws with some serious power. But honestly, I feel in actuality his background is more based on his grappling game, and I don't think that we really got to see that in his highlight reel. So, like many of his fellow Dagestani fighters, he is an expert in Sambo, and he has as many submission wins to his name as he does knockouts. Now, Abreu is currently on, or Abreu, is it Abreu or Abreu? Abreu is currently on a 1-fight winning streak. His pro MMA record is 15-3-0, and his last fight was in July of this year against Sam Alvey. Now, that was a win by unanimous decision. I don't know if you guys remember that one. Sam Alvey was actually a bit upset about the decision for that fight, and he wasn't very smiley at the end of it. And God bless you. Now, Abreu is a grappler who is more than willing to strike, but despite coming into the UFC with a strong record, which is 15-2, I feel that Abreu just isn't a great or as great of an athlete as we think, and I think that's always likely to hold any fighter back against a bigger, more explosive fighter. And for this one, it's a bigger fighter at 205 pounds. Now, against, what's the guy's name? Ankalaev. I think that Abreu simply had, little answer to that fighter's powerful takedowns, and he couldn't really get his grappling game going from his back either. So I think that bottom line for this fight, guys, even Abreu's fight against Alvey, his last fight, it wasn't that impressive, which explains Alvey's response to, the decision of that fight. It was, classic, Sam Alvey fight, looking for the counter right hook. And then he failed to land it, and he had a low output striking kind of match. So I think that there's definitely a chance that Abreu could surprise Shamil in this fight. Shamil is making his UFC debut after all, and that's something that we have to keep in mind. Sometimes when fighters are making their debut, they get that octagon shock. But Shamil has fought in the cage for quite some time, so I'm not worried about the shock so much as I am it just being a new platform for him to come in on. But so based on what I've seen of Shamil, I feel like he's too similar to some of Abreu's past opponents, and it's difficult not to pick Shamil in this because of that. So I'm going to go with Shamil Gamzatov for the win. Let me know who you guys have in the chat. Shamil Gamzatov or Klidson Abreu. All right, Whiskey Dragonfly says Duncanstein something is going to walk Zabit. Kattar is going to display how much better his skill set is versus Zabit. Well, we will get to that. Nick C says, 2 joints anything? Sent DS a message. Thank you, 2 joints. Not a yet, Nick, brother. Pulse Resurrected says, guy on the right is Gastelum in 10 years. Nick C says, I messaged him this morning. Still no reply, bro. Trent Jacobson says, agree, Pulse. Sebastian, hello, Jesse. Hello, Sebastian. Whiskey Dragonfly says, Shamil is future championship material. All right. Like I said, name value is not going to be very high on this one, but certainly worth the watch. I think these are still going to be some very interesting fights. I'm having trouble speaking, guys. I have like congestion and my fucking cheeks hurt. Ah!
You can't stop the Siberian Express. Choo-choo, motherfuckers.
JBH equals GOAT.
Thanks,
Fight
Connor.
briefing, baby, let's go. Hope everyone's day is wonderful, wonderful. Shout out to the Carnage crew. Fist. Fuke Paulo Costa. Love you, JBH and Moss. Thumbs up.
We love you, Connor Hernandez, and shout out to the Carnage crew. For those of you guys who don't know what that is, link in the description to the second channel, not the MMA-Holes. And you can figure out what that means over there. All right. Next fight of the evening. Bear with me. I'm like swallowing mucus right now. It's disgusting. Next fight of the evening. So the second fight on the main card. Let me just get rid of this guy for you. This Gamzatov guy. We have Ramazan Emeev versus Rocco Martin. Now, this one actually interests me a little bit. And like I said, it is another kind of no name or lack of name, I guess you could say, but still very interesting fight. Anthony Rocco Martin is currently on a 1-fight losing streak. He's coming off of a loss right now to Damian Maia. And Damian Maia has been on a little bit of a tear. But Martin last fought in June of this year, and his record is 16-5-0. So here's the thing about Martin. I think faced with a striker as powerful as Emeev will be, I think it's likely that Martin will want to impose his will on Emeev by taking him to the ground rather than standing and trading for him or trading with him. And we usually see that a lot with people, with fighters who prefer or who know that they have more of an advantage on the ground. So that won't surprise me at all to see him try and take Emeev to the ground. Now, Martin is an extremely skilled grappler, and he is capable of taking out all but the best on the mat, but he has to be careful because Emeev has an excellent ground game as well. So for me then, this comes down to whether Martin can get Emeev to the ground. If he can, I suspect that it'll be his fight to win in this particular circumstance, because even though Emeev does have great ground game, has great defense, I don't know if it's up to par with Martin. I believe Martin is very heavy from the top. He is more capable of catching dangerous chokes and other submissions, and I think particularly power-based ones like the Kimura and his top control alone could easily wear Emeev out. Now, Emeev is on a 7-fight winning streak. He's 18-3-0, and his last fight was September of last year. So it's been a little bit since we've seen Emeev get back in. Now, he's not a total novice on the ground, like I said. He has escaped some extremely dangerous positions in his fights, like one with Alberto Mina he escaped from. So I have faith in his defense on the ground. I truly believe that Martin could definitely be in some danger on the feet if Emeev, decides to keep it there, and he hits extremely hard. Now, it's not like he'll be at a size disadvantage despite Emeev dropping down to welterweight from 185 pounds. Emeev is certainly more stocky. Martin is longer, he's lankier. But for me, bottom line for this fight, Martin is the fighter with more ways to win the fight, I think. While also acknowledging that Emeev definitely has a puncher's chance here, I'll take Martin to wear out Emeev, pretty quickly and take a decision. So I'm going to go with Martin by decision on this fight. Let me know who you guys have. Anthony Rocco, Martin, or Ramazan, Emeev. All right, bisexual agent says my jaw was a balloon. My jaw was a balloon. That's right. My jaw, well, it's not as much of a balloon now as it was. On Monday, I was like a fucking chipmunk. Now it's just really sore. It's a little swollen on the left side still, but now it's a little bit sore, but it's no big deal. I can't pronounce either dude's name, says Boss Kogar. Sean Hart with the fist in the air. Coach Mikey Ditka says, sorry I couldn't make it to MSG to meet you guys. Hope you saw my message, JBH. Oh, didn't you say you had emergency surgery or something like that? Vigo Stockholm says that you look good as a chipmunk. Yeah, I should just stay as a chipmunk. Zoltan Bose says no more wisdom for you. That's right. Maybe that's what's gonna happen since my wisdom teeth were pulled. Now I won't have any wisdom on these fights, and I'll just fail every single one now. No! All right, guys, let's move on to the next fight of the main card. Don't you love how UFC never gives you full pictures of the fighters? So now we have Khadis Ibragimov. There we go. Allow me to just do this since the UFC likes to fuck everything up. Khadis versus Ed Herman. Now, some of you guys have seen Ed Herman fight in the past. For the ones who are just coming in to the UFC or just becoming fans of the UFC, maybe you have not, but I'll just give you a brief rundown on him anyways. Ed Herman is currently on a 1-fight winning streak. His pro MMA record is 23-14-0, and his last fight was May 18th of 2019. He did win against Patrick Cummins. I don't have it anymore. Moss took it down. The Patrick Cummins soundbite we do not have anymore. All right. Herman's been in the UFC for 13 years now and has taken insane amounts of punishment over his time. He's dropped 3 of his last 4 fights, which is why we haven't really seen him fight regularly as of late, though he did earn, like I said, his first knockout win over Patrick Cummins in May, which was his first win in over 3 years. Now, Ibragimov is coming off of a loss right now. His current MMA record is 8-1-0. Khadis Ibragimov. His last fight was August of this year, so not too long ago, but he did lose by standing guillotine against Da Un Jung, and I believe that was UFC China that happened. Ibragimov did lose his UFC debut as well, and it was UFC China actually, right? Yeah, it was UFC China. So he did lose it. Before that, however, he was undefeated, and he only had 2 of his 8 wins by decision. All the rest of them have been finishes of some sort, both on the feet and on the ground. So we know that this guy's extremely well-rounded. So I think bottom line for this fight, without knowing too much about Khadis, it's difficult to really determine how a fight like this will play out against someone like Herman. Herman has been out of the picture for a little while now. He did come back in May, as I previously mentioned, and although we did see a first-round knockout, I'm concerned that we still aren't exactly sure what type of Herman we're going to get on Saturday night. Now, before his knockout, Herman was on a 3-fight losing skid, which is a little concerning. 2 of those fights were by knockout, so we know that Herman doesn't really have a chin. Going against a knockout artist in Khadis, I'm a little concerned for Herman here, so of course I had to pick Khadis, Ibragimov by KO TKO. Let me know who you guys have in the chat. What kind of name is Herman? That's a very good question, my friend. Taylor Haley, what type of Herman are we going to get? Ha 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 ha. What's so funny about that? Vigo Stockholm says Herman is Moss. Steelers Respect is laughing in the chat. CC says, who's the best underdog to bet on this weekend? That's a good question. That's a really good question. Coach Mikey says, Borman, Sean Hart, not sure to be honest. Herman is a cutie, says bisexual agent. Two Joint says, wasn't Ed Herman arrested for wearing women's clothes and drinking in a Walmart bathroom, man? Colvick says, journeymen are making a comeback. Nick C. 33, I'll go for Ann H. Dude. Taylor says, do you still have B cups? Also, your show is really good. Thank you. My show is really good, and I won't answer that question, Taylor, because it's none of your fucking business. All right, let's move on. The next fight on the main card. Let me take Ed Herman off. I mean, not Ed Herman. What's his name? Khadis. Take him off. There we go. Much better. Zelim Imadaev versus Danny Roberts. Another very difficult name to really get hyped up or jump into, but I promise this can be a very exciting fight. Imadaev is currently on a 1-fight losing streak. His record is 8-1-0, so it's practically his only loss since being undefeated. And it was against Max Griffin back in April of this year. And he lost via majority decision. Now, given the fact that Zelim struggled so much to prevent takedowns against Griffin, another man known more for his striking than his grappling skill, then it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility that Roberts could look to secure a takedown and perhaps hunt for a submission, because we know that Imadaev is sort of, his takedown defense is not great, even against non-elite grapplers, which is insane. Now, Zelim may be lacking in the grappling department, but he was able to bounce back to his feet in numerous occasions against Griffin. And if nothing else, he is a very heavy, violent striker. He's more willing to throw flashy strikes at his opponents to get the job done. Now, to me, that is a little worrying for Roberts, particularly when you consider that he tends to be a reactive fighter rather than one who pushes forward from the off. Now, Roberts is on a 2-fight losing streak right now. His MMA record is 16-5-0, and his last fight was against Mitchell Pereira back in May of this year. He lost via flying knee and punches in the first round, and in my opinion, the likelihood is that this fight should be decided by how Roberts looks to play things and looks to play Zelim's game. Now, although Roberts is more of a striker than a grappler, he's not a novice on the ground. He has the ability to defend himself, and he has the ability to out-grapple weaker grapplers. Now, the problem, though, is that Roberts is almost a decade into his professional MMA career, and he's taken quite a lot of damage along the way, to the point where it's probably fair to question his chin. Of course, 4 UFC losses, 3 have come by knockout, and all of them have been extremely violent finishes. Against Pereira in particular, Roberts simply didn't look ready for the onslaught that his opponent threw at him, and he was just taken out in under just 2 minutes. So, bottom line for this fight, I think this is a tricky fight to call, as Zelim's head may be in a far different place than other opponents who have taken Roberts out in the past. But in the end, I just can't trust the chin of Roberts and against a fighter who has 8 knockouts on his ledger. So, of course, I'm going to have to go with Zelim Imadaev for the win. Let me know who you guys have in the chat. CC 2.0 says, I want Kattar to derail the hype. Vigo Stockholm, can I party with JBH even though I am handicapped? Sure, go for it. Let's see. Deranged says Robert needs to go in and fight, and he won't, so he will lose. By the way, Deranged, you did win the Randy Couture hat giveaway, so if you could send us an email, themmaholes@gmail.com. Let us know your shirt size and your address so we know where to send it, or you can let us know through the MMA Holes website. Just go to the contact page. You can contact us through there. All right, guys, let's move on to the next fight, the co-main event of the evening. Oh, I got to take Zelim off of here. There we go. Sorry, Zelim. Had to get the boot. This is a great co-main event. I'm not always fond of them putting Greg Hardy on the main card. I think he's still got a lot of amateur moves. Just by looking at his open workouts, he seems a little sloppy. And I was telling Moss when we were watching him, I was like, I'm almost a little embarrassed for the guy. You know, he's a great fighter, and he is in his rookie year, so he has a lot to learn, and I believe that he will be an extremely tough competitor. Down the line, I just think that there's some things he needs to work on, and he really hasn't had enough time to work on that. And because of his name, the UFC just kind of threw him on in the main card. But nonetheless, I'm not disappointed with the co-main event at all. I think this is extremely exciting because now he's really facing a big league. Him facing Alexander Volkov is probably going to be his toughest fight that he has had so far, and I'm actually really excited to see it. Now, Volkov is coming off of a loss by punches to Derek Lewis, who some could argue is another kind of sloppy fighter in the beginning of his fights, and then he kind of turns around and takes that win towards the end, which is exactly what he did with Volkov. But unlike Derek Lewis, Hardy, I feel Derek Lewis still knows more, and that's because he had the ability to rise up the ranks and kind of get to where he is, whereas Hardy was just kind of thrown into it. Now, Volkov, like I said, coming off a loss is 37-0. Volkov will surely be a step too far for Greg Hardy, in my opinion. I feel Volkov will be the first opponent Hardy has faced to have an actual size advantage on him. Volkov stands at 6'7", and he just barely makes the 265-pound heavyweight limit. And unlike the bulky Hardy, he's actually pretty fucking slender for a big man. Now, he's also surprisingly fast, Volkov, and nimble on his feet. He knows how to make the most of his massive size and his reach. He throws long punches and kicks from a distance and at his opponents to keep them at bay, and then he sort of circles around them or catches them, at the end with something a little bit more powerful. We haven't really seen all that much of Volkov on the ground in the UFC, but in his Bellator career, he did show plenty of skill there, so we know the guy is extremely well-rounded. For example, he did submit UFC contender Blagoy Ivanov in Bellator with a rear naked choke back in 2014. So the guy's just good, and he's probably going to be one of Hardy's toughest opponents, if not the toughest opponent Hardy will be facing right now. Now, Hardy is on a 2-fight winning streak, one of them a little controversial. He's coming off of a no contest against Ben Sassoli. I don't know how many of you guys remember the Inhaler Gate. It just freaking happened, so it's not easy to forget. The guy took a win in the fight, and then it was overturned to a no contest, and the only reason we're really seeing him fight Alexander Volkov is because he was willing to take the fight on short notice when Junior Dos Santos withdrew due to leg injury. That's the only reason that this is actually happening. Now, either way, he essentially has, a puncher's chance here, but I feel that puncher's chance or not, it's a little concerning for Greg Hardy. He doesn't really have anything else aside from that. Now, Hardy is a genuinely tremendous athlete, and he hits pretty hard. What the fuck, man? Why does it do this?
Super chat.
Vlad with the 2. And it's not going to read it, of course. He says, Hardy by brutal KO. Let's go. Man. Well, let me just finish with this, and then I'll explain to you why, Vlad. But it's a good pick you have here, but I'm a little concerned about him in this fight particularly. Now, to answer your KO thing, Vlad, like I was saying, he only has that puncher's chance. He doesn't really have anything else against Alexander Volkov in this fight. Volkov is much more well-rounded. Volkov can take him to the ground. Volkov has the cardio. Greg Hardy does not. So you're right. If Hardy can catch him in the beginning, maybe he does have a puncher's chance and can get that KO. But if Volkov can keep a range and really play this smart and have Hardy play his game, then Volkov can easily take the win by KO or TKO. Hardy would gas out pretty quickly. Hardy's ground game is severely lacking. We saw that in the Crowder fight. He may have improved since then, but by how much? It hasn't been long since that fight. Now, we saw his cardio in his Sassoli fight, and it was shit. He had to use an inhaler. I'm interested to see how he'll do without that inhaler this time. So for me, unless Hardy knocks him out at first in the beginning exchange of the fight, then you'll be right and he'll get that KO. But if he doesn't, given that he couldn't do that to Sassoli or Crowder, I think there's no reason to suspect that that'll happen here against Volkov. And I think that this should comfortably be Volkov's fight to win. I suspect Hardy will try too hard to knock him out, and he'll run out of steam, and he'll become easy pickings for Volkov. So I'm honestly going to go with Volkov by KO TKO. Let me know who you guys have in the chat. All right, Sean Hart says, inhale, exhale, you are the victim. Vlad says, Nicholas Montemayor, that's all I had left of my EBD card, bro. Let's see. Damn, no more milk till the first, huh? What? Vigo Sockholm says, please say massive. Clown Vigo says, inhale black Sharpies. What's the odds on this one, JBH? I feel to put 800 euros on Volkov, or is it still too risky? Listen, I am going to be perfectly honest with you. Any kind of an underdog pick is risky. I don't even know. Is Volkov the underdog? Let's check BetDSI real quick and see if Volkov is the underdog. I mean, it would make sense if he is. But like I was saying, any kind of underdog pick is a risky pick, you know? So it's ultimately, what do you feel comfortable with? I would put money on Volkov. If it was my own money, I would do it. So Hardy's the underdog. So you won't even have to worry. If you put money on Volkov, you're just going to have to put a bunch of money to really make out anything on Volkov. But Hardy is where you would go. So if you think Hardy's going to win the fight, if you think he's going to knock him out early on, then, you can put money on Hardy. I just don't think Hardy's going to win. Especially with Volkov being the favorite. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, you know? So do whatever you want. I can't tell you how to spend your money. All right, guys. Last but not least, the main event of the evening. Zabit Magomedsharipov versus Calvin Kattar. I have been waiting for a Zabit fight for quite some time now, actually. There was a fight that was supposed to happen with Zabit a little while ago that didn't play out. And I love Zabit. I think he's great. But there are some, including Moss, I think, who can argue that he is a hype train and that he's not all that he's, made out to be. But I disagree. I like this guy a lot. He did take a unanimous decision win over Jeremy Stevens back in March. His record is 17-1-0, and he is on a 13-fight win streak. Now, Zabit is much more willing to throw kicks at an opponent. In fact, leg kicks were largely how he wore down Stevens early on in the fight. I also believe that with his strong wrestling and his grappling game, he carries much more of a takedown threat for Kattar. Now, I do feel Zabit has such high-level skills in all areas. I feel that he's as difficult a match for anyone in the division. His one weakness, though, is his tendency to get into brawls at times, which honestly doesn't seem that bad when you consider that he also showed a pretty solid chin in his fight against Kyle Bochniak. But Kattar's not the kind of fighter that you want to get into a brawl with because he can catch you quick, and we really don't know how Zabit's chin is yet. So Now that we've never seen him knocked out or anything like that, so we can assume that he has a pretty solid chin. But there's always everybody has a kryptonite, right? So Kattar, who's on a 2-fight winning streak, is 23-0, and his last fight was in June against Ricardo Lamas. He did win by punches in the first round. This guy has some serious knockout power, Now, Kattar has been fighting for over a decade now. He's at 31 years old. This is almost certainly his chance to break into the real elite of the division. I think this will be his shoe-in against Zabit. But the issue for Kattar, in my opinion, is going to be with the well-rounded skills of Zabit. Now, also, the length of Zabit, he has a little bit of a reach there, and I worry that Kattar's incredible on the feet. He's well-rounded enough to say that he can defend himself on the ground. I just don't know if his grappling is up to par with Zabit's. So Kattar has proven himself to be an extremely vicious striker. Like I said, he's great on the feet. And if he gets his opponent hurt, he's more than capable of putting them away. He's done it time and time again, as we saw when he stopped both Burgos and Lamas. But for as impressive as those wins were, I think it's important to remember that both men have boxing heavy striking styles, and that appears to play into Kattar's hands a little bit. So I think bottom line for this fight, at the end of the day, Kattar has never fought someone as well-rounded and skilled as Zabit Magomedsharipov, and that's despite Kattar's strong, wins that he's had. And I really feel that when you take into account that Moicano largely used leg kicks, he used jabs, he used the threat of a takedown to work him for 3 rounds only, and this is a 5-round fight as a main event. I just can't see this going any differently than that, so I'm going to have to take Zabit by a lopsided decision. Sorry. I know there's a lot of people on Kattar's side, and we probably should because, Kattar's coming out of, he's from CES. We are affiliated with that organization, and, I always want to go for the CES guy, but I can't. I can't in this fight. I really think that Zabit is going to win. Let me know who you guys have in the chat. CC says, odds on Kattar, he is an underdog. Boss Kogar says Zabit's last name is way too long. I mean, come on. CC says, is it Kattar? Is it Kattar or Kattar? What are you saying? Kattar. Kattar. That's how it is. I disagree. Kattar via TKO, 3rd round, and you might be right. You might be right, Nicholas. Listen, if you choose Kattar for this fight, I'm not going to say you're wrong. You have a very good chance of winning this fight because Kattar is a freaking animal. I've seen him fight over and over again. The guy's just good. He's great. Like, he's excellent on the feet. He can take care of himself on the ground. He's an incredible knockout artist. So, in no way do I say you're wrong by choosing Kattar. I feel that Zabit has a few more tools to work with, and we're going to find out on Saturday night. I could be completely wrong. I don't think I am, but I think, but it's always possible. That's the thing about MMA. That's what I like is we can sit here and we can make our picks and we can argue who's going to win and who's not going to win. But in MMA, anything can fucking happen. It's not like who's the best football team. We know the Patriots are going to win against the Giants. It's not like that. This is literally anything can happen. Someone's health could be off. They could get hit in the right spot. Anything can fucking happen. And that's what I love so much about this is you can go with the odds and you can make the picks. But when that time comes for them to fight, you could some guy could get a fucking liver shot and just drop. And it could be the guy that you never expected. That's what I love about the sport is it keeps you on your toes. Nicholas says, but Zabit could easily twist him up and get the sub. Dapper Dave says that college tuition is already spent on CBD. Real gamer, I bet my life insurance policy on Kattar. Steelers Respect says Tony Ferguson will maul Zabit. Sean Hart says, wonderful, wonderful, Moss. CC Moss, you think he's got more chance than Volkov's fight? Very true, JBH, says Sean Hart. Modinho King says he's not a hype. We still haven't seen his wrestling, but I'll say his cardio is questionable. For who? Hardy or for the main event? Who are you talking about? MMA-Holes says Volkov is going to smash the BBC. I'm going for Kattar. Sean Hart says, but Kattar, Whiskey Dragonfly, Zabit declined a 5-round fight in his homeland. Kattar accepted. Zabit isn't a real Russian BMF. He declined a 5-round fight? Wait, so is this a 3-round fight because it's on short notice? Would this be a 3-round main event? He declined a 5-round fight? JBH, cool, your hair isn't red. No, my hair's not red. Except the Super Bowl 120 hanging with the boys. Goyle.
Hanging with the boys.
All right, guys. That is it. That sums up the main event or the main card for UFC Moscow happening this weekend. I'll go over it one more time with you guys. Let's do that. So, kicking off the main card, Shamil Gamzatov versus Klidson Abreu. Ramazan Emeev versus Anthony Rocco Martin. Khadis? Ibragimov versus Ed Herman. Zelim, Imadaev versus Danny Roberts. Your co-main, Alexander Volkanovski. I almost said Alexander Volkanovski. Alexander Volkov versus Greg Hardy. And then your main event, Zabit Magomedsharipov versus Calvin Kattar. Thank you guys for telling me your picks. We will be live tomorrow night for Fook-Off Friday, our first Fook-Off Friday in a long time, actually. And I can't drink because I'm taking a bunch of medication from my face. But yeah, we'll see you guys for Fook-Off Friday. I hope you guys enjoyed the fight briefing tonight. Thank you for telling me your guys' picks. We'll see you guys tomorrow night, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Check your local listings. And yeah, don't be an a-hole. Be an MMA hole.